The text messages wouldn't stop. For 3 years, they came in relentless waves, thousands upon thousands of them. Threatening messages, obsessive messages, messages that seemed to come from a woman who had vanished without a trace. The police thought she had simply run away. Her family believed she was alive, somewhere out there, sending those digital breadcrumbs. But the truth was far more sinister. Cari Farver wasn't sending those messages. She couldn't. She had been dead since the very first day she disappeared, her body hidden so well it would never be found. And the person behind those messages, someone who had fooled everyone, including the detectives, for years. If you love true crime stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat, make sure to subscribe to Cold Truth Files with Alex. Hit that subscribe button now, because you won't want to miss what happens next. Cari Farver was a regular woman living in Macedonia, Iowa, a small town where everyone knew everyone. She was 37 years old, a hardworking computer programmer, and most importantly, a devoted mother to her teenage son, Maxwell. Cari's life revolved around Maxwell. She would never abandon him. Her friends and family all agreed on one thing. Cari would do anything for her boy. In the fall of 2012, Cari was single and looking for companionship. Like many people in the modern age, she turned to the internet. Online dating seemed like a reasonable way to meet someone new, especially in a small town where the dating pool was limited. That's when she met Dave Kropa. Dave was a mechanic working at a local auto shop. He was 35 years old, divorced, and a father of 2 children who lived with their mother. Dave was upfront about what he wanted, nothing serious. He had just gotten out of a long-term relationship and wasn't looking to jump into anything heavy. He wanted something casual, something fun, something without strings attached. Cari seemed fine with that arrangement. They met in person in early November 2012, and there was an instant physical attraction. They started seeing each other casually, going on dates, spending time together. Things seemed simple enough, but there was something Dave hadn't told Cari. He was also seeing someone else. Her name was Shauna Liz Gollier. Liz Gollier was 41 years old and, like Dave, worked in the automotive industry. They had met a few weeks before Dave met Cari. Liz was everything Dave said he didn't want. She was looking for commitment, for a real relationship, for someone to build a life with. But there was chemistry between them, and Dave couldn't quite bring himself to end things, even though he knew Liz wanted more than he was willing to give. So Dave did what many people do in these situations. He tried to keep both relationships going. He saw Liz. He saw Cari. Neither woman knew about the other, at least not at first. Everything changed on November 13th, 2012. That morning, Cari came to visit Dave at his apartment. It was supposed to be a casual visit, just the two of them spending some time together. But when Cari arrived, she got an unpleasant surprise. Liz was there. The encounter was awkward, extremely awkward. Dave tried to play it off, but the tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Cari realized in that moment that she wasn't the only woman in Dave's life. Liz realized the same thing. The two women sized each other up, neither saying much, both trying to process what this meant. Cari didn't stay long. She left the apartment visibly upset. Dave walked her to her car, and they talked briefly. Cari told him she wasn't interested in being part of a love triangle. She said she needed to think about things. They made tentative plans to see each other again, but nothing definite. That was the last time Dave Kropa saw Cari Farver alive. Later that same day, November 13th, 2012, Dave started receiving strange text messages from Cari's phone. The messages were odd, rambling, unlike the way Cari normally communicated. She texted that she didn't think things were going to work out between them. She said she wasn't ready for a relationship after all. The tone was off, but Dave figured maybe Cari was just upset about meeting Liz. Then the messages got stranger. Cari texted that she was taking a new job. She was moving away. She needed a fresh start. Dave was surprised, but not overly concerned. They had only been seeing each other for a couple of weeks. If Cari wanted to leave town for a new opportunity, that was her choice. But Cari's son Maxwell knew something was wrong immediately. Maxwell was 15 years old. He lived with his father in another state, but was in constant contact with his mother. Cari called him every single day. She texted him all the time. She was the kind of mother who never let a day go by without checking in on her son. So when Cari suddenly stopped responding to Maxwell's calls and texts, he panicked. He tried calling her over and over. Nothing. He sent text after text. No response. This wasn't like his mother at all. When he finally did receive a text from her number, it didn't sound like her. The message said she had taken a new job and would be very busy. She said she'd call him when she could, but she didn't know when that would be. Maxwell stared at his phone in confusion. His mother would never just take off without really talking to him. Something was very, very wrong. Maxwell's father contacted Cari's family. Her mother, Nancy Rainey, was equally alarmed. Cari would never abandon Maxwell. Never. Nancy tried calling her daughter. No answer. She drove to Cari's apartment in Macedonia. Cari's car was gone. Her apartment looked normal, nothing obviously disturbed, but Cari wasn't there. Nancy went to the police to file a missing person report. The police took the report but didn't seem overly concerned. Cari was an adult. She had sent messages saying she was moving away for work. Maybe she just wanted a fresh start. Maybe she'd get in touch when she was ready. Nancy tried to explain that Cari would never leave without telling her son. She would never just disappear like this. But the police had seen cases like this before, adults who wanted to start over, who cut ties with their old lives. Without evidence of foul play, there wasn't much they could do. Meanwhile, the text messages from Cari's phone kept coming. But they weren't going to her family. They were going to Dave Kropa and to Liz Gollier. In the days and weeks after Cari's disappearance, Dave's phone became a constant source of stress. Text messages from Cari's number flooded in at all hours of the day and night. The messages were bizarre, obsessive, and increasingly hostile. The Cari behind these messages claimed to be watching Dave. She said she drove by his apartment. She said she saw him with Liz. She accused him of choosing Liz over her. The messages became threatening. Cari said she would make Dave's life hell. She said she would hurt anyone he cared about. Dave was disturbed but didn't quite know what to do. He tried blocking the number, but the messages kept coming from different numbers. He tried ignoring them, but they persisted. Cari seemed to know details about his life, his movements, where he was, and who he was with. And then Liz started receiving messages too. The messages Liz received were even more disturbing. Cari sent her threatening texts, telling her to stay away from Dave. She sent her graphic, violent messages describing what she would do to Liz if she didn't back off. Liz was terrified. She had barely known Cari, had only met her that one awkward time at Dave's apartment, and now this woman was apparently stalking both of them. The harassment escalated quickly. Cari created fake email accounts and social media profiles. She sent messages to Dave's family members, his coworkers, his friends. She posted Liz's personal information online. She sent pornographic images to Dave's phone, claiming they were of Cari. She sent emails to Liz's work, trying to get her fired. It was relentless, constant, overwhelming. Dave and Liz went to the police multiple times. They showed the officers the thousands of messages they had received. The police documented everything, but explained that unless Cari actually hurt someone, there wasn't much they could do. Harassment laws at the time were limited, especially when it came to digital harassment. Liz became convinced that Cari was dangerous, that she was mentally unstable, that she was capable of violence. Dave started to believe it too. The messages were so unhinged, so obsessive. It seemed like Cari had snapped after that encounter at his apartment, like she couldn't handle being rejected. But here's what Dave and the police didn't know. Cari Farver had been dead for months, and the person sending those messages was sitting right next to Dave, playing the role of the terrified victim. It was Liz Gollier. As the months went by, the situation became more and more surreal. The messages from Cari continued without pause. Thousands of texts, emails, Facebook messages, posts on online forums. It was a digital avalanche. Liz played her part perfectly. She acted terrified. She cried to Dave about the harassment. She showed him the threatening messages she received. She went to the police with him to file report after report. She even moved into Dave's apartment, claiming she was too scared to live alone with this crazy woman stalking her. Dave believed Liz completely. Why wouldn't he? She seemed just as much a victim as he was. She was receiving the same threats, the same harassment. They were in this together, united against this shared tormentor. But behind the scenes, Liz was orchestrating everything. She had multiple phones, multiple email accounts, multiple Facebook profiles. She would send herself threatening messages from Cari, then show them to Dave with tears in her eyes. She would send Dave messages from Cari, then comfort him when he got upset. She created an entire digital phantom, a ghost that haunted both of them, a ghost that she controlled completely. The harassment took on increasingly disturbing forms. Cari posted Dave's address online, claiming he was a sexual predator. She sent threatening messages to his ex-wife about their children. She contacted his employer, trying to get him fired. She sent hundreds of emails to Liz's workplace, making wild accusations. Liz reported all of it to the police, playing the role of the frightened victim so convincingly that no one suspected her. She even went to court to try to get a restraining order against Cari Farver, presenting all the messages as evidence. The judge granted the restraining order, even though Cari Farver hadn't been seen in person for over a year. But Liz's performance had another purpose beyond deflecting suspicion. Every time she reported the harassment to the police, every time she showed them new messages from Cari, she was reinforcing a narrative. Cari Farver was alive. Cari Farver was out there somewhere, hiding, sending these messages. Cari Farver was a dangerous, unstable stalker. The police believed it. Dave believed it. Everyone believed it, except Cari's family. Nancy Rainey never believed her daughter was sending those messages. She knew Cari. She knew her daughter would never abandon Maxwell, would never cut off contact with her family completely, would never engage in this kind of bizarre behavior. Nancy tried to get the police to investigate Cari's disappearance as something more serious, but they kept pointing to the messages. Look, they said, Cari's clearly alive. She's sending messages. She's stalking her ex-boyfriend. She probably just doesn't want to be found. But Nancy wouldn't accept it. She became her own investigator. She looked into Cari's financial records. No activity, no credit card purchases, no bank withdrawals, nothing. Cari's paycheck from her job went into her account untouched. Her car had been found abandoned in a parking lot just days after she disappeared, but the police said maybe Cari had ditched it and gotten a new vehicle. Nancy examined the messages supposedly sent by Cari. They didn't sound like her daughter. The language was wrong. The phrasing was off. Cari was intelligent, articulate, a computer programmer who communicated clearly. These messages were rambling, often barely coherent, filled with misspellings and strange grammar. Nancy went to the FBI, begging them to get involved. She went to local news stations. She posted on social media. She did everything she could to keep attention on her daughter's case. But with the constant stream of messages from Cari's phone, most people believed Cari was alive and simply didn't want to be found. Years passed. 3 long years of harassment, thousands upon thousands of messages, and still no sign of the real Cari Farver. Then, in 2015, Liz Gollier made a critical mistake. Dave and Liz's relationship had always been rocky. Dave never fully committed to Liz the way she wanted. He would break up with her, then get back together with her. He would try to date other women, and Liz would become jealous and possessive. But the constant harassment from Cari kept pulling them back together, creating this shared trauma that bonded them. By 2015, Dave had finally had enough. He broke up with Liz for good and started dating someone new, a woman named Amy Flora. Dave was actually falling for Amy. He was happy. He was ready to move on from all the drama. Liz was furious. On the night of November 16th, 2015, Amy was at home when she smelled smoke. She ran outside to find her garage engulfed in flames. The fire department arrived and put out the fire before it spread to the rest of the house, but the garage was destroyed. When investigators examined the scene, they found clear evidence of arson. Someone had deliberately set the fire. Amy was shaken. Dave was horrified, and immediately, they both suspected Cari. Who else could it be? This stalker had been terrorizing them for 3 years. Of course, she would escalate to violence. The police finally took things more seriously. Arson was a major crime, not just harassment. They started investigating more thoroughly. And as they dug deeper into the case, they started to notice things that didn't add up. Detective Ryan Avis of the Pottawatomie County Sheriff's Office took over the case. He was a skilled investigator, and something about this whole situation bothered him. He started looking closely at the digital trail, at all those thousands of messages supposedly sent by Cari Farver. He brought in digital forensics experts. They started tracing IP addresses, examining metadata, looking at the technical details behind all those messages. And they discovered something shocking. The messages weren't coming from various locations, as you'd expect if Cari was really on the run. They were coming from a very specific area, and that area was wherever Liz Gollier happened to be. Detective Avis started building a case piece by piece. The digital forensics team worked tirelessly, examining phones, computers, email accounts, social media profiles. The picture that emerged was disturbing. Liz Gollier had created an entire alternate reality. She had multiple email accounts in Cari's name. She had fake Facebook profiles. She had multiple phones that she used to send herself messages, then showed to Dave and the police as evidence of harassment. The experts found that many of the messages sent to Dave and to the police had actually been sent from Liz's own devices. She would use one phone to send a message as Cari, then pick up another phone and respond as herself. She had been having conversations with herself, creating this elaborate charade. But that wasn't all. Investigators found something even more chilling on Liz's digital devices. There were photographs. Hundreds of photographs of Dave, taken without his knowledge. Photos of him at work, at home, in his car. Photos taken through windows from hidden vantage points. Liz had been stalking Dave for years, documenting his every move. There were photos of his house, his apartment, his vehicles. Photos of women he dated. Photos of his children. The extent of Liz's surveillance was staggering. Then they found a photo that changed everything. Deep in the deleted files of one of Liz's digital devices, forensics experts found an image. It was a photograph of a human body bound with zip ties, lying on the floor. The photo was dark, grainy, difficult to make out clearly, but you could see enough. The person in the photo was dead, and based on the timestamp, the photo had been taken on November 13th, 2012, the same day Cari Farver disappeared. Investigators enhanced the image as much as they could. They looked for identifying features, for anything that could tell them who was in that photo and where it was taken. They could see the zip ties binding the person's arms and legs. They could see what appeared to be a garbage bag. They also noticed something else in the background of the photo. A tattoo on the photographer's leg, partially visible. A tattoo that matched one of Liz Gollier's tattoos. This was it. This was the evidence they needed. On December 22nd, 2016, more than 4 years after Cari Farver vanished, police arrested Liz Gollier for the murder of Cari Farver. After Liz's arrest, investigators worked to piece together what had really happened on November 13th, 2012. Based on the evidence, they developed a theory of the crime. On that morning, after Cari left Dave's apartment following the awkward encounter with Liz, she returned to her own apartment in Macedonia. She was upset, processing what had just happened, trying to figure out what to do about her budding relationship with Dave. Liz followed her there. The two women likely had a confrontation. Liz, already obsessed with Dave, already feeling threatened by any other woman in his life, saw Cari as a rival who needed to be eliminated. The confrontation turned violent. Liz killed Cari in her own apartment. Based on a photograph found on Liz's device, she bound Cari's body with zip ties. Then came the truly chilling part of her plan. Liz took Cari's phone, her laptop, her email passwords, her social media credentials. She essentially stole Cari's digital identity. Then she disposed of Cari's body somewhere it has never been found, despite extensive searches. From that day forward, Liz became Cari in the digital world. She sent messages as Cari, created emails as Cari, posted on social media as Cari. But instead of impersonating Cari to cover up the murder quietly, Liz did something far more twisted. She created a version of Cari that was obsessed with Dave. A version that stalked him, threatened him, terrorized him. She created this narrative where Cari was unhinged, dangerous, a woman who had lost her mind over a man. Why? Because it gave Liz power. It kept Dave thinking about Cari, which in a twisted way meant thinking about the love triangle, which kept Liz relevant in his life. It gave her an excuse to stay close to Dave, to comfort him, to position herself as his ally against this shared enemy. And most importantly, it made everyone believe Cari was alive. As long as those messages kept coming, no one would seriously investigate Cari's disappearance as a murder. The police wouldn't look for a body. They wouldn't look for a killer. They'd be looking for a troubled woman who didn't want to be found. It was a brilliant, horrifying plan, and almost worked. Liz Golyer's trial began in October 2017. She was charged with first-degree murder in the death of Cari Farver. But this was unlike any murder trial most people had ever seen. There was no body, no crime scene, no physical evidence of the actual killing, no witnesses to the murder itself. The prosecution's case rested almost entirely on digital evidence, the thousands of messages, the photographs, the metadata, the IP addresses. The lead prosecutor, Brenda Beadle, had a massive challenge ahead of her. She needed to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Cari Farver was dead and that Liz Golyer had killed her, all without a body. The prosecution presented their digital evidence meticulously. They showed the jury how Liz had created multiple fake accounts. They showed how the messages, supposedly from Cari, had actually been sent from devices and locations associated with Liz. They brought in digital forensics experts who explained the technical evidence in detail. They showed the photograph of the bound body. They showed Liz's tattoo that matched the one visible in the photo. They showed that the photo had been taken on the day of Cari's disappearance and had been on a device owned by Liz. They brought in Dave Kropa to testify. Dave, who had been completely fooled, who had lived with Liz, who had believed for years that Cari was stalking them. He testified about the harassment, about the thousands of messages, about how Liz had seemed just as much a victim as he was. They brought in Nancy Rainey, Cari's mother, who testified tearfully about her daughter. She told the jury about Cari's love for her son Maxwell, about how Cari would never have abandoned him. She described her years of trying to get someone, anyone, to believe that her daughter was in danger. The defense argued that without a body, without a clear crime scene, the prosecution couldn't prove murder. They suggested that maybe Cari really had sent those messages. Maybe she was mentally unstable. Maybe she had run away and was still out there somewhere. But the evidence was overwhelming. The digital trail was too clear, too detailed, too damning. After deliberating, the jury returned their verdict. Guilty. Guilty of first-degree murder. The courtroom erupted. Nancy Rainey broke down in tears, finally getting the justice she had fought for. Dave sat in shock, processing how thoroughly he had been deceived. Maxwell, now a young man, finally had some closure, though he would never get to see his mother again, never get to say goodbye. Judge Timothy Burns sentenced Liz Golyer to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The case of Cari Farver became a landmark case in digital forensics and cybercrime prosecution. It was one of the first murder convictions in the United States based almost entirely on digital evidence, without a body ever being found. For Dave Kropa, the revelation was devastating. He had been in a relationship with Cari's killer. He had lived with her, trusted her, believed her tears and her fear. Liz had used him, manipulated him, made him part of her elaborate cover-up without him ever knowing. The guilt and trauma of that realization haunted him. For Amy Flora, whose garage Liz had burned down, it was a close call. If the police hadn't intensified their investigation after that arson, Liz might never have been caught. Amy had been targeted simply for dating Dave, for being another woman Liz saw as a rival. For Nancy Rainey and Maxwell, there was justice, but no peace. Cari's body was never found. They never got to lay her to rest properly. They never got answers about exactly how she died or where her body was hidden. Liz refused to tell investigators where she had disposed of Cari's remains, taking that secret with her to prison. Extensive searches were conducted in fields, forests, and bodies of water around the area where Liz had lived and worked. Ground-penetrating radar was used. Cadaver dogs were brought in, but Cari was never found. To this day, her final resting place remains unknown. The case raised important questions about digital stalking, harassment, and how easy it is to create a false digital identity. Liz had sent an estimated 15,000 to 20,000 messages over the 3 years she impersonated Cari. She created multiple email accounts, social media profiles, and used various phones. The sheer scope of her deception was staggering. It also highlighted failures in how missing person cases are handled. The police initially dismissed Cari's disappearance because messages were coming from her phone. They didn't look deeper into the financial inactivity, the abandoned car, or the concerns of her family. If they had investigated more thoroughly from the beginning, Liz might have been caught much sooner. Psychologists who studied the case try to understand Liz Golyer's motivation and mental state. What would drive someone to commit such an elaborate, sustained deception? The most likely explanation involves a combination of obsession, narcissism, and psychopathy. Liz was obsessed with Dave Kropa to a pathological degree. When Cari appeared as a romantic rival, Liz couldn't tolerate the competition. The murder itself might have been impulsive, committed in a moment of rage during a confrontation. But what came after showed careful planning and a chilling lack of empathy. Instead of trying to hide the crime simply and quietly, Liz created this elaborate 3-year performance. She enjoyed the control. She enjoyed manipulating Dave, the police, everyone around her. She enjoyed being the center of attention, playing the victim, having everyone's sympathy. The constant messaging served multiple purposes. It kept people believing Cari was alive. It gave Liz an excuse to stay close to Dave, to move in with him, to be part of his life. It allowed her to terrorize any other women Dave tried to date, warning them away while appearing innocent herself. It was a level of manipulation and deception that most people can barely comprehend. To maintain that many fake identities, to send that many messages, to never slip up for 3 years, it required constant effort and attention. Liz was living a double life every single day, and she never appeared to feel remorse for what she had done to Cari or to Cari's family. The Cari Farver case represents a new kind of crime that has emerged in the digital age. Before smartphones, email, and social media, it would have been almost impossible to convincingly impersonate someone for 3 years. But technology gave Liz the tools to create an entirely fake reality. She could send texts from multiple numbers. She could create email accounts instantly. She could make social media profiles in minutes. She could Photoshop images and create fake documentation. The digital world allowed her to be in multiple places at once, to have conversations with herself, to create the illusion of an entire person who didn't actually exist anymore. Law enforcement had to adapt to investigate this new kind of crime. Traditional investigative techniques weren't enough. They needed digital forensics experts who could track IP addresses, examine metadata, recover deleted files, and trace the digital footprints left across multiple devices and platforms. The case also highlighted the dark side of our digital lives. We trust that the person messaging us is who they say they are. We assume that the social media profile belongs to the person pictured. We believe the emails come from the sender listed. But Liz proved how easy it is to fake all of that, to create a convincing digital ghost. It's a cautionary tale about digital identity and verification. In an age where so much of our lives exists online, where relationships can be conducted entirely through screens, how do we verify that the person on the other end is real? While Liz Golyer sits in prison, the real victims of her crime continue to suffer. Maxwell lost his mother when he was just 15 years old, at a time when he needed her most. He grew up without her, graduated high school without her, became an adult without her guidance. He never got to say goodbye. He never got answers about why this happened or where his mother's body is. That loss will affect him for the rest of his life. Nancy Rainey lost her daughter and spent years fighting to get anyone to believe that something was wrong. She knew in her heart that Cari would never abandon Maxwell, but she had to watch as the police, the courts, and the public accepted the fiction that Cari was just a troubled woman hiding from her responsibilities. The vindication of the guilty verdict couldn't replace the years of frustration and grief. Dave Kropa was traumatized by the revelation that he had been intimate with his girlfriend's killer, that he had been used as an unwitting pawn in Liz's cover-up. He struggled with guilt, even though he was a victim himself. The harassment that he endured, the stress of 3 years of stalking, and then the shock of learning the truth, all of it left deep psychological scars. The other women Liz targeted, Amy Flora, and others who briefly dated Dave, were terrorized by someone pretending to be a dangerous stalker, never knowing they were actually being threatened by the woman who presented herself as a fellow victim. And somewhere, in a location known only to Liz Gollier, Cari Farver's remains lie undiscovered. Her family may never have the closure of being able to bury her, to visit a grave, to have a physical place to mourn. The conviction of Liz Gollier was a victory for justice and for digital forensics. Prosecutors proved that even without a body, even without traditional physical evidence, a murder case could be won based on the digital trail left behind. But the case also leaves us with troubling questions. How many other people might be creating fake digital identities right now? How many stalkers are hiding behind screens, sending messages from fake accounts, pretending to be someone they're not? How do we balance the convenience and connectivity of our digital lives with the security risks they create? Should there be better identity verification for email accounts, phone numbers, and social media profiles? How should law enforcement prioritize missing person cases when the missing person appears to be communicating digitally? Should financial inactivity and family concerns be weighted more heavily than text messages that could be sent by anyone with access to a phone? These questions don't have easy answers. Technology moves faster than laws, faster than social norms, faster than our ability to fully understand the implications. The Cari Farver case is a stark reminder of how our digital tools can be weaponized by someone with malicious intent. During the trial, some of the most compelling testimony came from the digital forensics experts who had spent months analyzing the electronic evidence. They explained to the jury how they had tracked down every message, every email, every post supposedly from Cari. They showed that Liz had been incredibly prolific in her impersonation. She would send messages at all hours of the day and night, from multiple devices. Sometimes she would have entire conversations with herself, sending a message from one phone, then picking up another phone to respond. One expert testified about examining the photograph of the bound body. Using enhancement techniques and analysis of the image's metadata, they determined when and where the photo was likely taken. The metadata had been partially deleted, but enough information remained to place it on the day of Cari's disappearance. Another expert discussed Liz's internet search history, which was damning. Before and after Cari's disappearance, Liz had searched for things like how to hide a body, decomposition rates, and how long before someone is declared dead. These searches painted a picture of someone planning and covering up a murder. The prosecution also presented evidence of Liz's obsession with Dave. They showed emails where Liz talked about Dave to friends, expressing her feelings for him, her frustration that he wouldn't commit to her. They showed that Liz had been monitoring Dave's online activities, tracking his social media, looking up information about women he dated. Witness after witness testified to receiving strange messages supposedly from Cari. Co-workers of Dave, his family members, his friends, all had been contacted by Cari with bizarre, threatening, or inappropriate messages. The scope of Liz's harassment campaign was revealed in full during the trial. Liz Gollier's defense attorneys faced an uphill battle. The digital evidence against their client was substantial and damning, but they mounted a defense nonetheless, arguing several key points. First, they challenged the idea that Cari Farver was actually dead. Without a body, they argued, how could the prosecution be certain? Maybe Cari really had run away. Maybe she had mental health issues. Maybe she was living somewhere under a different identity. The absence of a body meant there was reasonable doubt about whether a murder had even occurred. Second, they suggested that even if Cari was dead, the prosecution hadn't definitively proven that Liz killed her. The photograph was disturbing, but could they prove beyond any doubt that it showed Cari? Could they prove that Liz had taken it? The defense tried to raise questions about the digital evidence, suggesting it could have been tampered with or misinterpreted. Third, they tried to present Liz as someone who was also being victimized by Cari's harassment. They argued that Liz had received threatening messages just like Dave had, that she had feared for her safety. They suggested that her behavior, the reporting to police, the restraining order, was that of a genuine victim, not a perpetrator. But the defense faced a major problem. The evidence was simply too strong. The digital forensics experts had meticulously traced the messages back to Liz's devices. The photograph with Liz's tattoo visible was damning. The search history about hiding bodies and decomposition was difficult to explain away. Perhaps most damaging was the sheer scope of the deception. If Liz was really just a victim being harassed by Cari, why were so many of the harassing messages traced back to devices she owned? Why had she sent messages to herself and then shown them to police? Why had she created fake email accounts in Cari's name? The jury didn't buy the defense's arguments. The guilty verdict came relatively quickly after deliberations began. Liz Gollier is currently serving her life sentence at the Nebraska Correctional Center for Women. She will never be eligible for parole. She will spend the rest of her life behind bars. In the years since her conviction, Liz has given no interviews and has made no public statements about the case. She has not revealed where she hid Cari's body. She has not shown any public remorse for her crime. Some people who knew Liz before the murder have spoken about their shock and disbelief. They described her as someone who seemed normal, friendly, someone you'd never suspect of being capable of murder. She held down a steady job, had friends, appeared to function normally in society. The mask she wore was convincing, but those who got to know her more intimately saw warning signs. Ex-boyfriends described possessive behavior, jealousy, and inability to accept rejection. Some mentioned that Liz had a temper, that she could be vindictive when she felt wronged. Looking back, the red flags were there, but no one imagined they pointed to someone capable of murder and such elaborate deception. Prison psychologists who have evaluated Liz reportedly found indicators of personality disorders, including narcissistic and antisocial traits. She displayed a lack of empathy, a need for control, and an ability to manipulate others without apparent guilt. These are classic markers of psychopathy. What's particularly chilling is that Liz maintained her deception even after her arrest. During initial police interviews, she denied everything. She insisted she was a victim, that Cari was the stalker, that the police had it all wrong. Even when confronted with the digital evidence, she stuck to her story. Only when the evidence became completely overwhelming did she stop protesting her innocence. But even then, she didn't confess. She didn't explain what happened. She didn't tell authorities where Cari's body was hidden. She simply fell silent, exercising her right not to testify at trial. This silence has been particularly painful for Cari's family. They won their day in court, they got justice, but they didn't get closure. They still don't know exactly how Cari died. They don't know if she suffered. They don't know where her remains are. Nancy Rainey has made public appeals to Liz, begging her to reveal where Cari's body is. She has said that she forgives Liz, that she just wants to bring her daughter home, to give her a proper burial. But Liz has never responded to these appeals. Some speculate that revealing the location of the body is the last bit of power and control Liz has. By keeping that secret, she maintains some leverage, some ability to inflict pain on Cari's family. It's a final act of cruelty from someone who has shown no capacity for remorse. Even after Liz's conviction, the search for Cari Farver's remains continued. Law enforcement, aided by volunteers and search and rescue teams, conducted extensive searches of areas where Liz had lived, worked, and spent time. They searched fields and wooded areas around Omaha and Council Bluffs. They searched near the auto shop where Liz worked. They used cadaver dogs, ground-penetrating radar, and other technology designed to locate buried remains. They followed up on tips from people who thought they might have information. But Nebraska and Iowa contain vast areas of rural land, forests, and farmland. Without any indication from Liz about where she disposed of the body, searchers were looking for a needle in a haystack. They were working with an area of hundreds of square miles. Investigators theorized about what Liz might have done. Given that she had time and privacy, Dave didn't know about the murder. No one was looking for Cari initially. She could have transported the body almost anywhere. She might have buried it in a remote location. She might have hidden it in a structure. She might have disposed of it in water. Some investigators believed Liz might have used her knowledge of the area to find a particularly well-hidden location. Others thought she might have had help, though no evidence ever emerged suggesting an accomplice. The most likely scenario is that Liz, acting alone, disposed of Carrie's body somewhere she was confident it wouldn't be found. The fact that Carrie's body hasn't been discovered in over a decade suggests Liz chose her hiding spot well. It's a grim testament to how thoroughly she planned this crime. For Nancy, Rainey, and Maxwell, the ongoing absence of Carrie's body is a wound that won't heal. They can't have a funeral. They can't visit a grave. In some ways, even though they know Carrie is dead, there's still a part of them that exists in limbo, unable to fully say goodbye. Looking back at the case, there were warning signs that something was wrong with Liz Golyer's story from the very beginning. But in the moment, with emotions running high and everyone caught up in the harassment, these signs were missed or dismissed. One major red flag was how Liz always seemed to be right there when Carrie escalated her stalking. Every time Dave tried to move on, every time he started dating someone new, the harassment would intensify. And Liz would be right there to comfort him, to remind him that they were in this together, that only she understood what he was going through. Another warning sign was the nature of the messages themselves. While they were supposedly from an obsessed stalker, they often served to drive a wedge between Dave and other women or to pull Dave and Liz closer together. The content of the harassment seemed almost designed to benefit Liz. Friends and family of Dave later said they had found Liz to be overly possessive, too invested in Dave despite his repeated statements that he didn't want a serious relationship. Some had advised Dave to end things with her completely, sensing something wasn't right. But Dave, a fundamentally trusting person, didn't see the danger. The police also missed opportunities to dig deeper. When Liz first reported the harassment, they could have done more thorough digital forensics immediately. If they had examined the metadata and IP addresses of those early messages, they might have discovered they were coming from devices associated with Liz. But at the time, police resources for digital forensics were limited, and harassment cases weren't always given high priority. Carrie's family also reported that they had tried multiple times to make police understand that something was seriously wrong. They explained that the messages didn't sound like Carrie, that she would never abandon her son, that the financial inactivity was alarming. But their concerns were dismissed in favor of the simpler explanation. Carrie was the one sending the messages, so she must be alive. The case is now studied in law enforcement training programs as an example of how digital evidence can be manipulated and how important it is to verify the source of electronic communications, not just their content. The Cari Farver case had ripple effects beyond the criminal justice system. It raised awareness about digital privacy, security, and the ease with which someone can impersonate another person online. Cybersecurity experts used the case as a teaching moment, highlighting how Liz was able to access Carrie's digital life. She had Carrie's phone, which likely gave her access to email accounts, social media, and other services. This raised questions about how we secure our digital identities and what happens to our online presence if someone gains physical access to our devices. The case also demonstrated the limitations of digital communication as proof of life. For 3 years, everyone assumed Carrie was alive because messages were coming from her phone and email accounts. But those messages proved nothing except that someone had access to her devices and accounts. This has led to changes in how law enforcement approaches missing person cases involving digital communication. Now, investigators are trained to look deeper to examine financial activity, metadata, IP addresses, and other indicators that can reveal whether the missing person is actually the one communicating. The case also highlighted the phenomenon of cyberstalking and how difficult it can be for victims to get help. Dave and Liz, pretending to be a victim, reported the harassment dozens of times, but the police felt powerless to stop it. This led to discussions about strengthening cyberstalking laws and giving law enforcement better tools to track down and prosecute digital harassers. Technology companies also took notice. The case demonstrated how easily someone can create multiple fake accounts and use them to harass others. While complete identity verification for online accounts raises privacy concerns, there have been incremental improvements in how platforms detect and shut down fake accounts and harassment campaigns. Unfortunately, the Cari Farver case is not unique. There have been other instances of people using digital impersonation to cover up crimes or harass victims. In some cases, abusers have stolen their victims' phones and sent messages to family and friends claiming everything is fine, buying themselves time to escape or cover their tracks. In others, stalkers have created fake accounts impersonating their victims to ruin their reputations or manipulate their social circles. What made Liz's case unusual was the scope and duration of the deception. 3 years of sustained impersonation, tens of thousands of messages, multiple fake accounts and identities. It was an extraordinary level of commitment to the lie. Law enforcement and legal experts have used the case as a precedent. It proved that a murder conviction is possible even without a body, as long as the circumstantial and digital evidence is strong enough. This has given hope to families in other cases where a loved one has disappeared and is presumed dead, but no remains have been found. The case also demonstrated the importance of digital forensics in modern criminal investigations. The evidence that convicted Liz existed entirely in electronic form metadata, IP addresses, deleted files, photographs on hard drives. Traditional detective work was still important, but the case was ultimately solved by people who understood technology and could trace the digital breadcrumbs Liz left behind. For Dave Kropa, recovery from this traumatic experience was a long and difficult process. He had to grapple with the fact that he had been intimately involved with a murderer, that he had been used and manipulated for years, that his trust had been exploited in the worst possible way. Dave went through therapy to process the trauma. He dealt with guilt, even though he had done nothing wrong. He wondered if there were signs he should have seen, moments when he could have realized what Liz was doing. He replayed their relationship in his mind, looking for clues he had missed. He also had to deal with the public nature of the case. After Liz's arrest and trial, the story became national news. Documentary programs covered it. News articles analyzed it. Dave's private life, his relationships, his decisions, all of it was scrutinized publicly. To his credit, Dave was willing to participate in interviews and documentaries about the case. He wanted to help others understand what had happened and to warn people about the dangers of digital deception. He spoke openly about his experience, about how he had been fooled, about the warning signs he wished he had recognized. Dave also expressed deep remorse for Cari and her family. He felt terrible that Cari had been killed essentially because she had the misfortune of meeting him, of becoming a romantic rival to someone as dangerous as Liz. He knew intellectually that Cari's death wasn't his fault, but emotionally, he struggled with the connection. In interviews, Dave has encouraged people to trust their instincts. If something feels off in a relationship, if someone seems too possessive or too invested too quickly, those are red flags worth paying attention to. He also emphasized the importance of digital security, protecting your devices, your passwords, your online accounts. The Cari Farver case is emblematic of how crime has evolved in the digital age. Traditional crimes like murder, stalking, and harassment now have digital dimensions that didn't exist a generation ago. Liz Gollier used technology as both a weapon and a shield. She used it to harass Dave and others, to manipulate the narrative, to create a false reality. But she also left digital fingerprints that ultimately led to her conviction. Every message sent, every account created, every photo taken left a trace in the digital world. This creates new challenges for law enforcement. Officers need to understand technology, digital forensics, metadata, IP addresses, and cell tower data. They need to be able to analyze devices, recover deleted files, and trace communications across multiple platforms. Many police departments have had to invest heavily in training and equipment to keep up with the digital nature of modern crime. It also creates challenges for the legal system. Judges and juries need to understand complex technical evidence. Defense attorneys and prosecutors need to be able to present digital evidence in ways that are understandable and compelling. The rules of evidence, which were developed in an era of physical evidence and eyewitness testimony, have had to adapt to accommodate digital proof. For the average person, the case is a reminder to be thoughtful about our digital lives. We create vast amounts of data, everyday texts, emails, social media posts, photos, location data. All of this information can be used against us by someone with malicious intent, or it can be used to solve a crime if we become a victim. The case also raises philosophical questions about identity in the digital age. Liz created a version of Cari that existed only in digital space, a ghost made of text messages and emails. This digital Cari was in some ways more present in people's lives than the real Cari had been, sending constant messages, always making her presence felt. But it was entirely fake, a puppet controlled by someone else. In an era where so much of our interaction happens through screens, how do we verify that the person on the other end is who they claim to be? How do we maintain authentic human connections in a world where digital deception is so easy? Cari Farver was more than just a victim in a true crime story. She was a real person with a real life, dreams, relationships, and a future that was stolen from her. She was a skilled computer programmer, working in a field where women are still underrepresented. She was good at her job, respected by her colleagues, capable and intelligent. She had a career she had built through her own talent and hard work. She was a devoted mother who loved her son more than anything. Friends and family remember how she would light up when talking about Maxwell, how proud she was of him, how she made him her priority in everything she did. Her relationship with her son was the most important thing in her life. She was a daughter, a friend, a person with hobbies and interests and a sense of humor. People who knew her describe her as kind, genuine, someone who would help others without expecting anything in return. She had a life full of normal, everyday moments, conversations with friends, family dinners, quiet evenings at home. All of that was taken from her on November 13th, 2012, because she happened to meet the wrong person at the wrong time. She went on a few casual dates with a man, and she encountered someone who was so possessive, so jealous, so lacking in empathy that she was willing to kill to eliminate a rival. Cari never got to see her son graduate from high school, never got to meet his future partners or see him build his adult life. She never got to achieve the career goals she was working toward. She never got to grow old, to experience all the moments of life that were ahead of her. Her family and friends keep her memory alive. They share stories about her. They remember her birthday. They talk about how much she would have loved seeing Maxwell grow into the man he's become. But there's always the shadow of how she died, of where her remains might be, of the justice that is incomplete without being able to lay her to rest properly. The murder of Cari Farver and the subsequent investigation offer several important lessons for society, law enforcement, and individuals. For law enforcement, the case demonstrated the critical importance of digital forensics in modern investigations. It showed that messages from a missing person's phone should not automatically be taken as proof of life. Financial activity, family relationships, and behavioral patterns need to be considered alongside digital communication. The case also highlighted the need for better training in recognizing and investigating digital crimes. The harassment that Dave and others experienced was reported dozens of times before police really dug into where the messages were coming from. Earlier intervention might have saved years of torment and might have led to Cari's body being recovered before the trail went completely cold. For the legal system, the case proved that murder convictions are possible without a body when other evidence is strong enough. This was not a new legal principle, but successful cases like this one reinforce it and provide a roadmap for prosecutors facing similar situations. For technology companies, the case raised questions about account security and identity verification. While perfect security is impossible and rigorous identity verification raises privacy concerns, there's an ongoing balance to be struck between ease of use and protection against abuse. For individuals, the case offers several important lessons. First, protect your digital devices and accounts. Use strong passwords. Enable two-factor authentication. And be aware that someone with physical access to your phone or computer can potentially access much of your digital life. Second, trust your instincts about people. If someone seems overly possessive, if they can't respect boundaries, if they react poorly to rejection, these are serious warning signs. Liz's ex-boyfriends had noticed her possessive tendencies, but Dave didn't know about that history. Third, be skeptical of digital communication as absolute proof of anything. If someone you know well suddenly starts communicating in a way that seems out of character, consider the possibility that their accounts have been compromised or that someone else is using them. Fourth, take stalking and harassment seriously. What Dave and others experienced was terrifying and had a real impact on their lives. If you or someone you know is being stalked or harassed, document everything and report it to authorities. The laws and resources for dealing with cyberstalking have improved since 2012, partly because of cases like this one. Even after Liz's conviction, many questions about the case remain unanswered. The biggest, of course, is where Carrie's body is located. But there are others as well. What exactly happened in Carrie's apartment that day? Was the murder premeditated, or did it happen in the heat of the moment during a confrontation? Did Liz go to Carrie's apartment planning to kill her, or did things spiral out of control? How did Liz get Carrie's passwords and account information? Did she force Carrie to reveal them? Did she find them written down somewhere? Did she use some other method to access Carrie's digital life? How did Liz dispose of Carrie's body without anyone seeing her? Did she do it immediately, or did she keep the body hidden for a while? Did she use her vehicle? Did she have access to tools or equipment that helped her hide the remains? Why did Liz create such an elaborate and sustained deception? She could have tried to make Carrie's disappearance look like Carrie had simply moved away for a new job, keeping the digital impersonation minimal. Instead, she created this massive harassment campaign that drew attention and eventually led to her downfall. Was it about control? About keeping Dave in her life? About enjoying the manipulation? Did Liz ever feel remorse? In the years she spent sending those messages, living with Dave, pretending to be a victim, did she ever feel guilty about what she had done to Carrie? Or is she truly someone without empathy, someone capable of killing and then carrying on with her life as if nothing had happened? These questions may never be fully answered. Liz has chosen silence, and without her cooperation, investigators can only speculate based on the evidence they have. The Cari Farver case didn't happen in isolation. It occurred in a broader context of violence against women, particularly intimate partner violence and violence motivated by romantic rejection or jealousy. While Liz Gollier is a woman and the case doesn't fit the most common pattern of male-on-female violence, it still reflects the dangers that can arise when someone becomes obsessively fixated on a romantic interest and sees others as obstacles to be eliminated. Statistics show that women are far more likely to be killed by intimate partners or acquaintances than by strangers. While Carrie and Liz were not intimate partners themselves, Carrie was killed because she was perceived as a romantic rival, because she was involved, however casually, with someone Liz wanted for herself. The case also reflects patterns seen in stalking behavior. Stalkers often have difficulty accepting rejection, become obsessed with their targets, engage in surveillance, and escalate their behavior over time. While Liz's stalking was unusual in that she impersonated someone else while doing it, the underlying dynamics were similar to other stalking cases. Domestic violence and stalking experts have used the case in their training and awareness programs. It demonstrates how dangerous obsessive behavior can become and how important it is to recognize warning signs early. The case also touches on issues of gender and crime. Female killers are relatively rare compared to male killers, and when women do commit murder, it's often in self-defense or in the context of long-term abuse. Liz's case is unusual, a calculated murder followed by years of elaborate deception, and it challenges some stereotypes about female violence. More than a decade after Cari Farver's murder, the impact of the case continues to be felt. For Carrie's family, the pain has not diminished, though they have learned to carry it. Nancy Rainey continues to advocate for victims of violence and for improvements in how missing person cases are handled. She speaks to law enforcement groups, sharing Cari's story and urging officers to take family concerns seriously, even when digital evidence seems to point in a different direction. Maxwell has grown into adulthood without his mother, carrying the weight of her absence and the knowledge of how she was taken from him. He has tried to build a life while honoring her memory, but the loss of a parent at such a young age leaves scars that never fully heal. Dave Kropa has worked to rebuild his life and relationships. He carries the trauma of his experience, but has tried to use it productively, helping others understand the dangers of digital deception and toxic relationships. He has participated in documentaries and interviews, keeping Cari's story alive and warning others about the warning signs he wishes he had recognized. Liz Gollier sits in prison, her life effectively over, spending her days in a small cell far from the world she tried to manipulate. She took Cari's life and destroyed her own in the process. Whatever satisfaction or sense of control she gained from her crimes has led to a permanent loss of freedom, of relationships, of any chance at redemption without revealing where Cari's body lies. The case has left a lasting mark on the true crime landscape. It's been featured in multiple documentaries, podcasts, books, and television programs. Each retelling serves to keep Cari's memory alive, to educate people about digital safety and the dangers of obsessive behavior, and to demonstrate the lengths to which investigators will go to solve a case and bring justice to victims. The story of Cari Farver is tragic, disturbing, and cautionary. It's a reminder that we cannot always know what darkness lurks behind a friendly face, that technology can be weaponized by those with malicious intent, and that justice sometimes requires patience, perseverance, and the courage to believe in the truth, even when all the evidence seems to point elsewhere. Cari Farver deserved better. She deserved to live, to raise her son, to continue her career, to grow old. Instead, she became a victim of someone else's obsession, her life cut short and her body hidden away. But she is not forgotten. Her family ensures that. The justice system ensured that. And now, through her story, she serves as a warning and a reminder of the very real dangers that can exist in our digital age. If you've made it this far, I want you to remember Cari not just as a victim, but as a person who was loved, who had value, who mattered. Remember the importance of trusting your instincts, of protecting your digital life, of recognizing warning signs in relationships. And if you or someone you know is experiencing stalking or harassment, please reach out for help. Document everything, report it to authorities, and don't dismiss your concerns just because the threats come through a screen. Remember to subscribe to Cold Truth Files with Alex for more true crime stories that expose the darkness that sometimes hides in plain sight. Justice for Cari Farver was hard-won, but it was achieved. May her story help protect others from similar fates.